In the series of videos that I'm planning to create, I'm creating or I have already created 3 Spring Boot applications. One will act as a config server. The another is a REST API called the book service, which actually has just one endpoint that will expose a list of books. And the last is the API gateway through which we will communicate with the book service. And if you look at the config server, I'm using Gradle as the build tool here with the plugins available from Spring Boot, as well as a plugin called Jib given to us by the Google guys for creating an image of this particular application. I'm using JDK 11 for this application. And you can see there is the Spring Cloud config server as the dependency. And the last thing is the Jib configuration itself that uses the base image, the Amazon Corito 11. And then it will be creating an image with this particular image and the particular tag that will be the project.version, which is 1.0. So I have already built the image. The image will take this particular name and the version, the tag will be 1.0, which I have already done and uploaded to the ECR. So this configuration application is very simple. It points to the Git repository where I have the properties of the other microservices that I have created. And then comes the book service. Again, this book service is pointing to the configuration server from which it will receive the properties of this particular application. Again, this has just one entity called book, and I'm using a faker library. And you can see in the build.gradle file, again, the same plugins are being used, the Zip plugin, which will ultimately create the image, which I have already pushed into the Elastic container repository. And here in this case, I'm not using the web MVC, I'm using a web flux, but that is not our point of discussion. And you can see I'm using the data faker library to create some fake data, which I'm using in this book entity. So in the constructor, I'm giving some fake names. And then when the application boots up, I'm creating some 10 book instances and then saving into the in-memory H2 database. And lastly, I have the book controller. As I told, I'm using the web flux. So we are expecting a list of books because it is web flux. We are expecting a flux of books when we hit the book and the list endpoint. Again, going back to the application.yaml file, it is pointing to the configuration server at this particular location. That's all this book service is all about. And the last microservice is the API gateway. So the API gateway is used to as a front end that will communicate with the book service. So I have just one configuration here. It will look for a book service a URL hit. If that is the case, we are going to hit the booking service. So this booking service I have injected here. So this is the booking service, which I have created a root properties just as a placeholder. And of course, as I told you, all these microservices will be communicating with the configuration server to get its corresponding properties. So you can see here, I have the AWS discovery config as the repository, where I have these two property files deposited for one for a booking service, which runs on port 8090 with the corresponding H2 database configuration, and the API gateway configuration that works on 8080 port, and it has the gateway.booking service pointing to the book service. And of course, I'm using an environment variable that will be provided when we deploy this application as a Docker container in ECS. That completes our discussion on the minimum or the minimal Spring Boot application. What next? Next is the VPC. So we'll talk about the different VPC that I have created in the next video.